Thank you, Senator. Senator David Cullinane, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Lasca Herlock. I don't get my information from the dispatches. I do get it from ordinary families out there who arrive in my constituency office every single week in ever-growing numbers. People who cannot afford to pay their mortgages, who are in mortgage distress. And it's very clear to those families that this government does not fully understand the depth of the mortgage distress crisis in this state. First of all, the numbers speak for themselves. 180,000 families in mortgage distress at this point in time, twice as many since this government came into office. Of that 180,000, 140,000 cannot pay their mortgage now or into the future. And we know that every month, 1,000 more families are falling into mortgage distress. Many of them cannot pay their mortgage for long time periods. And beside that, and going hand in hand with that, is the lack of any cohesive intervention measures or policies by this government to support people in mortgage distress. And that's despite the fact that the taxpayers of this country have put billions of euro into the banks, especially the pillar banks. Over 90 billion euro of taxpayers' money in some form or shape has been put into the banks. 30 billion for write-down on the NAMA loans, 30 billion to recapitalise the banks, 30 billion in relation to the Anglo promissory note. Of the 30 billion that was put into the pillar banks, Minister, your party and your government put 18 billion euro into those banks. 18 billion. And 10 billion euro of the overall money that was put into the pillar banks was to be used to offset losses in the domestic mortgage sector. As you know, there was rigorous stress testing carried out, and the banks came back and said, this is how much money we need, and we will need this money to have strong capital ratios, and we need this money to be able to deal with the losses in both the commercial and domestic market. And 10 billion was provided for to deal with losses in the domestic mortgage situation. And yet the banks are doing absolutely nothing to help people in mortgage distress. And this government is doing next to nothing either. You are allowing the banks to have a veto. You are allowing the banks to have full control. What I'm getting, and every single week, and I'm sure other senators are getting, copies of correspondence from banks saying that they will not engage with the mortgage to rent, they will not engage with split mortgages, they will not engage with any of the so-called interventions which are there. And I can provide the Minister with any number of letters from banks which are advising people to sell. That's what the banks are saying. Sell the houses and pay back the balance. And what the government doesn't seem to realise is that there is going to be some level of write-down. It's inevitable, because if the banks force people to sell, or if the banks repossess those homes, and we're talking about people's family homes, then the banks are going to have to sell those properties at a reduced price, probably a fire sale, will only get a fraction of what they're worth, will not get their full money, and will still land those families in debt. They'll have lost their house, and the banks will still have taken the loss. So there needs to be an imaginative response. What we have proposed, Minister, is an independent mortgage resolution body. What we want to see is a fair solution, and what we want is a mortgage restructuring panel set up independently that can look at each mortgage situation on a case-by-case basis. And the reason why we say on a case-by-case basis, to respond directly to criticisms of that, is because every case is different. Everyone's family circumstances are different. Everybody's income circumstances are different. The size of people's homes are different. The location of a home is different. The opportunities that people might have in the future are different. And the options which might be available, because what we want to do is to allow for the independent body to impose a fair solution that would look at the suite of interventions that are there, whether it is split mortgages or mortgage to rent, whatever it is, and it may involve some level of write-down, but to look at what's the best fix for everybody here, for the taxpayer, for the family, what's the best fix, and then impose that solution, rather than allowing the banks to have the veto that they have at the moment. And that's all we're trying to achieve. It's quite obvious, Minister, and I want to finish on this, it's quite obvious that if you do not act, and if your government does not act, the situation is going to get worse. And aside from the impact that has on all of those families who are in mortgage distress, the simple reality is this: as long as families are trying to pay a mortgage they simply cannot pay, and the debt for those families is unsustainable, and they are paying money that they simply don't have to pay their mortgages, as long as that continues, people won't have money to spend in the domestic economy. If the vast majority of families are servicing debt, they don't have money to spend, and it's exacerbating the problem we have in our domestic economy. You need to act. You need to put in place an independent body. You need to impose fair solutions. At the heart of that, it needs to be about keeping the family home. There will have to be some level of write-down, but you need to remove the veto from the banks. That's the crucial thing, and enable an independent body to impose fair solutions to ensure that where we can keep people in the family home, and ensure that there are fair solutions imposed, which is in the best interest of everybody. Thank you.